Hallelujah.
John here with a look at Bioshock Infinite on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. As the third pillar of the Bioshock franchise, Infinite is actually the only game in the series to have been created using Unreal Engine 3, rather than a modification of the previous generation engine. While this opened up new possibilities in regards to level complexity and set design, it also carries some baggage along with it. All of the classic issues that we've seen in previous Unreal Engine 3 ports to these consoles are unfortunately present and accounted for here. Of course, initial impressions aren't so bad, with both versions turning in a full 1080p presentation with a 60 frames per second frame rate, but problems start to creep in as you play further. First and foremost, the game is lacking anisotropic filtering on PlayStation 4. Yep, the same problem that we've seen in many other first generation Unreal Engine ports to the PlayStation 4 is back once again. And yep, just as we saw then as well, Xbox One does actually receive excellent texture filtering. There may be some hope, but we'll see. Last month when I saw the game in its pre-release form at Gamescom, I actually pointed out this problem to one of the team members that had been working on the port, and they did take note of the problem, but obviously it hasn't been fixed in time for release, and who knows if it actually will be, but we can hope. Aside from this omission, however, the rest of the game's visuals are basically identical between PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. If we compare it to the PC version, however, it becomes quickly evident that we're missing some of the more advanced visual features here, such as the alternate post-processing mode, which enables cleaner distant depth of field, and of course the DirectX 11 shadows. It is, however, a nice step up from the last generation console version. Really though, we're basically looking at the PC version running on consoles at somewhere less than the highest settings at a 1080p. Which would really be fine in this case, if not for one thing: performance. The performance profile in Bioshock Infinite is rather puzzling and somewhat disappointing. The game does target 60 frames per second, but it suffers from a multitude of issues that prevent it from feeling fluid throughout. Both versions suffer from noticeable hitching and skipping while moving through areas. Now, this is a side effect of Unreal Engine 3 data streaming, and it was a pretty noticeable problem on the PC when this game launched. There are massive threads on Steam dedicated to complaints about it, and well, sure enough, it's still a problem here, and that's disappointing. Of the two, Xbox One tends to suffer the most from the problem, but neither version are really great in this area, and it does feel like you're playing the game on a rather slow hard drive, which, well, I suppose you actually are. Then we have the more common performance dips that occur when the system is under load, and this is rather interesting to see. This scene actually starts off pretty comparably between the two versions, with similar drops before smoothing out to a solid 60 frames per second as we wander about through this area. However, it's not long before we're going to run into some more enemies, and as we push forward and combat begins, the PlayStation 4 version actually starts dropping more frames in this specific instance, which was actually a little unexpected as the additional hitching on Xbox One earlier actually had us expecting worse performance all around. That's not really the case. Though as we climb the stairs here and look out over the battlefield, we do see similar drops on both systems under 60 frames per second. But we also thought we should compare a quieter scene like this area here in Soldier's Field. We see similar results once again, with this open view of the area running significantly slower on the PlayStation 4. It really does take something away from the experience when your performance level is dropping like this. That said, as noted earlier, the Xbox One version does suffer from some pretty serious hitches and stutters just like this. Yeah, not great. The fact that the performance struggles both during combat and during exploration, though, is certainly disappointing here and does detract from the game on both systems. But there's one more oddity here: a form of screen tearing. Now, this is not the typical tearing you'd expect from a game, rather the game appears to go out of sync with the refresh rate in such a way that atypical tear lines appear along the top of the image. It's actually not unlike what we saw in the Metro games on PS4. The game behaves as if it were using VSync, however, in terms of its performance profile, so we just clip the top of the image in order to enable an easier to read graph here, but if you notice a few little tear lines along the top, well, that's what's going on. Still, it is a massive leap from the original console version with its 30 frames per second cap and plenty of drops below, so if you've only played the game on those consoles, and you have a new PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, then you'll certainly enjoy the game a lot more here, despite its issues. And that's really kind of it on the performance front. There's lots of dips under 60 frames per second during combat, plenty of hitching and skipping throughout, and some unusual tear lines. Taken as a whole, it just makes the whole package feel kinda sloppy and unrefined. Which is why my conclusion here is that we have a very average port on our hands. It is ultimately just the PC version of the game, but it's lacking in performance, missing some of the high-end visual features, and completely lacks anisotropic filtering on PlayStation 4, so if you have a modern PC, there just isn't a great reason to revisit Bioshock Infinite on consoles, since the experience just isn't as polished as other top-tier remasters. But again, if you only have consoles and want to revisit the game, it is probably still a better way to play it than the original version. As for my final thoughts on how the Xbox One and PS4 versions stack up against one another, I'd say that they both have their own advantages in different ways. Sometimes you get better performance on Xbox One, sometimes it's on PS4. Neither version brings a particularly smooth frame rate to the table here, so really it's more just which console you'd prefer to play it on then, really. I think I'm just gonna stick to the PC version though. Anyways, that's all from me for now. Would you kindly like and subscribe? And until next time, this is John signing off.